Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a true giant of literature, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. This is a profound story about what happens when a man and his entire culture are pushed right to the very edge of collapse. So let's start with a big question. What happens when the very thing that makes you strong is also the thing that will destroy you? See, that's the story of Okonkwo. On the outside, he was everything his people admired. A fierce warrior, a powerful leader. But deep down, his whole life was a fight against his father's memory, and it was all fueled by one thing, and one thing only: fear. Just raw, overwhelming fear. So let's unpack that. To get who Okonkwo is, you first have to understand who he was absolutely terrified of becoming. And that man was his own father, Unoka. You can see it right here. They were complete opposites. Okonkwo was all about strength, fame, and power. His father, well, Unoka loved music, he loved to talk, but he died in massive debt. In the eyes of the village, he was a total failure, and that's the legacy he left his son. Just a whole lot of shame. So what does Okonkwo do? He becomes the anti-Unoka. He defines masculinity for himself as pure aggression, total responsibility, and absolutely zero emotion. He becomes this legendary wrestler, a rich farmer, a big man in the village. Anything that reminded him of his dad, like music, he saw as weak. His entire life became this mission to just dominate, all to bury the ghost of his father. But you know, that kind of rigid strength, it always comes with a price. And for Okonkwo, that price was devastating. It all starts when a young boy named Umuofia comes into his life. See, Umuofia wasn't his son by birth. He was basically a peace offering from another village to prevent a war, and he ends up living with Okonkwo. For 3 years, this kid becomes part of the family. He's not just some boy they're looking after, he becomes like a real son to Okonkwo. He's the big brother that Okonkwo's own son, Woye, adores. He even starts calling Okonkwo father. It's a real bond. And then, just like that, everything changes. The village oracle declares that the boy has to be killed. Can you imagine? It's a devastating blow. And one of the village elders, a wise old man, he sees how much Okonkwo loves this boy, and he pulls him aside to give him some really important advice. He tells him, point blank, the boy calls you father. Do not bear a hand in his death. I mean, the message couldn't be clearer, right? He's saying, stay out of it. This isn't your burden to carry. This was Okonkwo's moment of truth. Was he going to be a father, or was he going to be a strong man? But that fear, that terror of looking weak, of being anything like his father, it was just too strong. It was stronger than his love for that boy. So when Umuofia, confused and scared, runs to him for help yelling father, Okonkwo pulls out his machete and he strikes the killing blow himself. That one act, totally born out of fear, doesn't just haunt him for the rest of his life. It completely shatters his relationship with his own son, Woye. And from that moment, things really start to unravel for him. His life takes another disastrous turn when a freak accident rips him away from everything he'd fought so hard to achieve. So they're at a funeral for one of the great men of the village. There's all this ritual gunfire, celebrating the warrior's life, and Okonkwo's gun just explodes. It's a complete accident. A piece of metal flies out and kills a young boy. A horrifying, tragic mistake. But in their culture, the law was the law. No exceptions. And the punishment for this kind of accidental killing? 7 years. 7 long years of exile. Okonkwo, his wives, his children, his entire family had to pack up and leave their home, banished from the village of Umuofia. And while Okonkwo is away, serving his time, trying to just get by in his mother's village, the world he left behind starts to change, dramatically. White missionaries show up. They bring a new god, a new way of doing things, and they start to slowly, piece by piece, dismantle the very foundations of his culture. And his own son, Woye, even converts. So after those 7 years are up, Okonkwo is planning this big, triumphant return. He's going to come back bigger and stronger than ever. But the village he comes back to, it's not the same one he left. It's been completely transformed by this new colonial power. It's almost unrecognizable. I mean, just look at this. The old ways were being replaced by something totally alien. Before, justice came from the village elders. Now, it came from white judges.
Before, status was earned through titles. Now, you could get it just by converting to the new religion. The colonizers brought their own government, their own laws, their own jail, and every single one of these new things chipped away at the clan's traditions.
And here's the really tricky part. It wasn't all bad. The missionaries built schools and hospitals. They offered a safe haven for outcasts and for people like Nwoye, who just couldn't stomach some of the harsher traditions, like leaving twins to die in the forest. So you see the dilemma, right? This new way of life offered something to people who felt left behind by the old ways. And Okonkwo just had to watch, horrified, as his people started, well, adapting instead of fighting back.
Okonkwo, though, he couldn't adapt. He just couldn't compromise. For him, there was only one way to deal with this: confrontation. And that choice, that refusal to bend, is what leads to his final tragic collapse.
And things escalate fast. A new Christian reverend pushes the clan too far, and in a moment of rage, they burn down the church. The colonial government's response is swift. Okonkwo and other leaders are arrested, they're humiliated, their heads are shaved. And for Okonkwo, this is the last straw. He is filled with this white-hot rage. He decides, that's it, we're going to war. So at a big village meeting, when a court messenger shows up to tell them to stop, Okonkwo doesn't hesitate. He kills him. But then, he looks around. And in that horrifying moment, he realizes he's all alone. No one else moved. They let the other messengers get away.
And in that silence, he gets it. It's all over. The clan he knew, the people who would have risen up and fought alongside him, they're gone. He knows what's next. He'll be arrested and judged by the white man's court. And that is something he absolutely will not let happen.
And this is the final, brutal irony of his life. According to his clan's own traditions, suicide is an abomination, an offense against the earth. Which means his own people, the ones he was trying to save, can't even touch his body to bury him. Think about that. The man who spent his whole life defending his culture, in his very last act, broke one of its deepest taboos. He died an outcast. So what do we take away from all this? Well, Okonkwo's story is really a tragedy on two levels. His personal story is a powerful warning about how a rigid, fearful idea of masculinity can destroy you. But it's also a mirror for the tragedy of his entire culture. You see, his own inflexibility, his fear of looking weak, those were the same cracks in his society that the colonizers were able to exploit. In the end, as Okonkwo fell apart, so did everything he ever fought for. And the final gut punch comes from the colonizer himself. After everything we've just seen, the district commissioner looks at Okonkwo's life and death and sees an interesting anecdote, something worth maybe a single paragraph in the book he's writing. He even has a title for the book ready: The Pacification of the Primitive Tribes of the Lower Niger. A great man's life, the collapse of a civilization, all of it reduced to a footnote in someone else's story. It just leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What happens when one person's entire world, their greatest tragedy, becomes nothing more than a curious little story for someone else?